Okay.
All right, this is an interview at the Division of Military Naval Affairs Headquarters, Latham, New York. It is the 30th of December, 2003, approximately 9 a.m. Interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Good morning. My name is John Frank Jankowy. My date of birth was April 28, 1945, and it was in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering service?
I did 8 years, first year elementary school, St. Michael's School in Brooklyn, New York. Then we moved to Long Island. I did 4 years of junior high and high school at William Floyd High School in Shirley, Long Island. Graduated there, went to Farmingdale Agriculture Institute. I was going to be a veterinarian. And I graduated in January 1965 and was accepted to Cornell, but not until September of 1965. I went to Cornell, and within a month I received my draft notice because I failed to call my draft board and tell them that I was having more than 6 months between the time I graduated till the time I was going to Cornell, and my 2S classification was canceled. So I ended up being drafted, and in the meantime my father got a job at GE Schenectady, and I came down here, and my uncle worked at Schenectady Army Depot, and he knew General Laddie Stahl, who at that time was at Knowles Atomic Power Lab, and General Stahl got me into the Army Reserve on Hillside Avenue. I originally joined a 444th Heavy Construction Battalion. That was disbanded into the 464th. Then that was disbanded into the 413th Quartermaster Company A, and then split and put into the 1018th Supply and Service Company. And that was a unit that was activated in April of 1968 on Holy Thursday. I believe it was April 12th. I went on active duty, conditional active duty right then and there, and I was down at the old Army Depot getting all our equipment ready to be deployed down to Fort Lee, Virginia. We were originally supposed to go to Fort Lewis in Washington, but that was changed to Fort Lee. And from May 13th, 68 until October 22nd, 69, we were in Fort Lee. And then we flew over to Vietnam then.
Now, what kind of duties did you have with the supply?
I was classified as I believe it was a 64 B-20. I was a heavy truck driver. I was a Spec 4 when we got activated, and I became a Spec 5 overseas. And the first month we had like a 2-week orientation. We started doing convoy duty just prior to Thanksgiving, 1968. And I did convoys to Phu Bai, Quang Nai, Quang Tri, up to the DMZ, down to Chu Lai, LZ English. And then just a week before Christmas, 1968, I was attached to the Navy, and I was petroleum liaison.
Stop a second. No,
Okay, sure.
Your unit went over together.
Yes, we all went over, 245 men. 244 came back. We had one loss, James McNeely from Scotia, New York. He was our only fatality.
Now, you were with that group until you were transferred over or assigned with the Navy then, or
Correct.
Was anyone else assigned with you, or was it just
No, it was just me. I was the only one in the barracks at the time because I had pulled guard duty the night before. My entire platoon left on a convoy to Phu Bai, and first shirt come in and just says to me, "You're in the Navy." So I had to pack up everything, get my tractor, go to Camp Tenshaw, get on an LST, and ship out to this island, and it was called Salween, but the island was called Gilligans Island by the Navy guys. And we even had a patch with a monkey climbing a palm tree and a whole bit. It was quite an experience. And I arrived on that island about 11:30 Christmas Eve, and I had nowhere to go, didn't know where I was going to sleep or anything. And when I drove the tractor off the ship, I heard this song, I'll Be Home for Christmas, and I followed the music to the Enlisted Man's Club, and that's where I started meeting all the Navy personnel, and they gave me a bunk in the Enlisted Man's Club to sleep until the next morning, where I could turn all my records in and everything. And I was there from December 24th, 1968 until September 3rd of 69.
Were there
And
any other Army personnel there, or just?
There was only one other Army man. He was with supply. He was liaison. He was a E6, and I was an E5. But I more or less, even though there was Navy personnel and the petroleum was run by the Navy, I took complete charge of the 1,000,000 gallons of fuel, and it was my directory to ship the fuel north and south of our destination. The convoys would come in twice a day, and we would probably push 125, 130,000 gallons a day, just in 5,000-gallon tankers. And that went on from December until the following August, when my unit, well, we were getting close to being recalled, so we had our 90-day stand down, and that's when they pulled me out at the end of August. And then we went back to Danang, and that's where I was stationed until we came home in October. And it's a time span, if you want to put it in there. We were flying home between Guam and Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska when the Mets won the World Series in 1969. So it was sort of that time span. I wasn't happy because I was a Boston Red Sox fan, so the Mets didn't bother me at the time.
In your interview form, you said that you had a slight concussion. How did you?
That was actually in one of the convoys. I got hit by an RPG, and I was carrying diesel fuel, and it blew out the back of the truck, knocked me out of the cab, and I landed, and I had the slight headache and a whole bit there, and I didn't even get a Purple Heart out. I just, I didn't apply for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't think it was, that important. It was part of the job. I wasn't hurt. I felt pretty good, just had a slight headache, and that was it. I was fortunate. So we just let it go like that, and but because I don't know, they were giving out Purple Hearts for stubbing your toe, for falling out of a bunk and breaking your ankle or whatever have you, and I just thought it degraded the original purpose of a Purple Heart, and I didn't think I was that bad.
Were your convoys under attack often?
Actually, convoys, we only got hit once or twice. In fact, I made a couple of ice runs from Danang to Quang Ngai Province, and we ran without any protection whatsoever. We just had a tractor and a refrigerated vehicle, and we went up, we got the ice, and it was just two of us. I was the driver and my shotgunner. That was it. And I guess when you're 21, 22 years old, you figure you're going to live forever, and what the hell. And that's the way a lot of the attitude was. You had to figure you were there for a year. You had to figure that you were going to come under circumstances where you were going to run into difficulty, but you took it, you know, you got up in the morning and that was it. Whatever the day brought, you did it.
You also said you were injured a second time
Well,
with a spider?
oh, jeez. Let's not. That was the weirdest thing. I was under the mosquito net. Somehow this spider got into my mosquito net, and all of a sudden, like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I felt this jab in my left foot. And I turned the light on, and here was this spider burrowed into me. So I slapped it with my hand. I killed it in a whole bit. And I got up. I tried to walk. It was painful. So I called the Navy medic, and he was a chief petty officer. And he gave me some antibiotics, got the spider, and the next morning he shipped the spider out to Danang. They found out it was a banana spider, which was poisonous. Now, what's a banana spider doing in Vietnam? Don't ask me. But that's what they called it. And my foot swelled up, balloon size, that the only thing you could see was my toenails. It swelled up so bad from just above the ankle down. It was unbelievable. And they eventually thought they were going to have to ship me out to the 95th Medevac in Danang, but it didn't happen. They fed me the antibiotics, and it took about 2 weeks before I could finally get back doing my duty. And during that time, there was this enlisted Navy guy. He was in charge of the enlisted man's club. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte. Big dude, everybody called him Bones. And he watched me for months driving a tractor trailer. He said, I can do that. And he did. He took it over, as well as the commanding officer of the Navy detachment. His name was Commander Richard Johnson. He was given a battlefield commission in Korea. And he took over the command of the Navy detachment in January of '69, and he made a bet with me that he could take that tractor, hook up the trailer, put it on a LCM-8 boat, take it out to the barges, fill it up with 5,000 gallons of fuel, bring it back, and drop it off for the convoy. And all it was going to cost me was a bottle of White Horse Scotch. So I told him, knock yourself out. And he did. He did it. He came back and he says to me, Sarge, you owe me a bottle. And I said, okay, sir, you got it. And that's what we did. It was really, you know, people would look at it and say, well, this wasn't really a military command, but the point was that that officer commanded the respect of everyone there. And when he gave an order, it wasn't an order. Everybody was just going to do it because the old man said, this is the way it's going to be. They trusted him, they respected him, and they loved him. And I tell you, he was one of the few officers that I ever knew in my military experience that I could really relate to and say, now, there was a man that knew his job, and he did it well. And I had the fortune to meet a gentleman from one of the Armored Cav divisions. At the time, he was almost 50 years old, and he had been with Patton when they relieved Bastogne. He was with Patton, Kazan Pass. He was in Korea, and he was in Vietnam. And he would tell stories, you know, from World War II in Korea. You know, you could just sit there and be mesmerized for hours. It was a very, very learning experience. And if I look back at what happened 35 years ago, I'd love to go back and do it all over again. Knowing what I know today. Back then, you're scared, you don't know what to expect when you go into a battlefield situation, especially Vietnam. And I was scared, I'm not going to deny it. I wish I didn't have to go, but I did go, because I sure was not going to go across the border and, leave my fellow Army reservists behind. None of us did. We all had a sense of duty, and we did it. And with the exception of one person, we all came back. And I met a lot of fine people. I visited places I would never have had a chance to visit. I was in Australia for 2 weeks. I had experiences that I would never have been able to do if it hadn't been for that time in my life. And I have no regrets on it. In fact, when we came back from Vietnam, I was discharged, and then I went back into my original outfit and stayed for another 3 years. I finally took my discharge in August of 1973, when I actually was discharged on October 20th, 1969. So I knew my old outfit was in need of some experience and some help to get going again, and I rejoined the Army Reserve within 6 months of being home.
Did you ever have much contact with the Vietnamese people?
Yes, I did.
What was that? What were your
Most of it,
relations like?
well, the relations were very, very good in a way, with one exception. January 1st, 1969, we were attacked with sappers at about 4 o'clock in the morning. They came in, they tried to knock out, there was some frogmen, they tried to knock out the LCM-8s, Mike boats, and they tried to take out the barges. And then they tried an attack from the mainland to come to the island, because when it was low tide, you could practically walk that quarter of a mile from the mainland to the island. And I was in charge of a 50 caliber machine gun. And when I manned that station, we ended up killing quite a few of the invaders. We ended up losing one Mike boat, but we didn't have any casualties. And it ended up where, as we picked up the bodies and brought them to the island, one of the casualties on the attacking force was our barber. For 6 months he had cut hair of every Navy man on the island. And that particular day he tried to cut their throats. And you just never knew who the enemy was. That was the problem. There were Vietnamese kids that could go through concertina wire without getting a scratch on them. I mean, they could go through that in a flash. And it was, you stop and you think about it. They could have done anything to you at any time. But most Vietnamese people really enjoyed the Americans. Now, whether it was because of the fact that the Americans spent money and bought stuff off them, that's, I guess, it's kind of fleeting as far as loyalty goes. Whoever paid the most got their attention and got their, acceptability, if you want to put it that way. It was a tough situation. You never really knew who your friends or your enemies were. And the one thing that I can relate to is at one time during Tet of '69, we used to take the garbage from the island to the mainland and dump it. And the Navy had a dump truck where we take the garbage every day. And this one man went with them, and he would ride on the sideboard. And during the course of this one time dropping off the garbage, all the kids used to come out there and help the GI, hey GI, we help you, and toss the garbage off. Well, one of them dropped a grenade in the gas tank, wrapped with just scotch tape. And as the dump truck came back to the Mike boat to go to the island, the gas tank exploded, and the guy riding on the board lost both his legs below the knees. And never know who did it or anything like that. But that's the kind of situation you had. And it was, you never knew. You never really knew. Like I said, same thing with the barber. Cutting your hair during the daytime, and then he tried to kill us that New Year's Day. During the course of the 9 months that I was in, or attached to the Navy, we probably had about 8 or 9 rocket-propelled grenade attacks and mortar attacks on our island. Most of the time, and the hardest part to believe is that they used to walk these mortars right around these 4 barges. They could have hit those barges anytime they wanted to, but they never did. It scared the living daylights out of us, because they dropped those mortars within a couple hundred yards of those tankers. I mean, it was accurate. Those guys, for what they had, they were accurate. But they never hit the barges, because if they had hit the barges, the way the inlet flowed would have wiped out the village of Sa Win. Because the way the South China Sea went out through this little inlet, because we were sort of in a peninsula. We were covered, this island was almost surrounded by a peninsula. And then your only way out was through this little inlet. And if they had hit those barges, they would have wiped out the village. So they never really hit it. They do it all around, you know, and we'd have a couple land on the island and a whole bit there, but never hit the barges. And I mean, you could dig a hole 6 inches into the island and the South China Sea would come up. Where were you going to go? Couldn't dig a foxhole. You had nowhere to run, really. You know, it was one of those things, and you stop and you look at it and says, oh my God, you could have got killed anytime. But it didn't happen. You know? And one of the experience I had there too, I had to refuel the battleship New Jersey. Set off the island a day, in fact it was New Year's Day, just after we had the attack on the island. The New Jersey needed a 10,000 gallon bladder of avgas for their observation planes. So we filled up a bladder and took it out to the New Jersey later that day, and I had a chance to go on board and walk around the ship with a bosun mate. And boy, you look at that ship, and when they said they could toss a projectile 25 miles within 100 yards of their intended target, that's pretty impressive. You know, real impressive. And I just said to myself, you know, all the battleships and the aircraft carriers and destroyers and the Coast Guard that used to come around and check all the sampans and everything like that. The only bad feeling I had about Vietnam was that we never had an opportunity to really show what we could do. We went into battle with our hands tied behind our backs. We weren't allowed to do anything. And one of the stupid things that I observed when I just did a convoy for a short span of time was that we had a convoy commander. When we left our base, we were driving down the road and we went through a village. We got small arms fire. The convoy commander had to call back to the base that we left. The base liaison would have to call the village chief to get permission to open fire. The village chief would have to call back to our main base, and then the main base would call our convoy commander and tell us whether we could or we couldn't open fire. Now, the village chief was probably 100 yards away from us when we were under fire, and we couldn't do a damn thing about it. We had to do this stupid thing of calling to whether we open fire or not. Now, I don't believe this happened during World War II. I don't believe it happened during Korea. But we couldn't open fire. And if we did open fire without permission, we were court-martialed. We were brought up in front of, and people ended up in Long Bin because of that. And I could see that's where there was a lot of frustration. We could have won that war. The firepower we had there, we could have went from the Mekong Delta right up into Hanoi, and they couldn't stop us, but we weren't allowed to. And, you know, I feel proud of what I had done. I feel for the 58,000 people that lost their lives, and some of them needlessly. But I think we had done the right thing, but I think we were misguided by the government at the time and by our leaders. We could have done a lot better. We could have done a lot better. So I apologize for that statement, but that's
I was going to ask you about rules of engagement, what you thought of them. What were your feelings about the anti-war protesters? Did you have?
I thought they were misguided. I mean, I really did. They were.
Did you ever have any run-ins with them when you returned? Or?
Yes, I did. I will have to say this. Prior to going to Vietnam, I worked in a gas station in Schenectady, and I knew Representative Sam Stratton, Mr. Sam, very well. And when I came back from Vietnam, we had our ceremonies on Hillside Avenue, and the following Monday morning, Sam Stratton came to my house and welcomed me back from Vietnam, thanking me for my duty. And, you know, and he realized, because he had known me before I went over there, because he used to come into the gas station quite often, and he just, you know, he was fantastic. And anything, he said, you need anything, you let me know, I'll help you. He wanted me to join the VFW at that particular time, and I said I couldn't do it. At that time, I just wanted to try to get back to normalcy, because it was very, very, it was very hard, because when you're in a war zone, we had certain things, like when we had a mortar attack, a siren would go off, and everybody would hit the dirt, get to the bunkers, and, you know, to fight back wherever it was. And I'll never forget walking down State Street just after I met Sam Stratton, and I was going past Carl's department store, and it was 12 o'clock, and the siren went off, and I hit the dirt. I hit the ground, covered my head, the whole bit. People walking by looking at me like, what's the matter with this guy? You know, and it was a conditioning that when something like that happened, you reacted to it. I felt embarrassed, but you know, it took me quite a while to let that thing filter from my mind, where I didn't react to it anymore. But that was one of the things that, you know, for the year, because when the siren went off, you knew what was coming in. So, and now I look back at it and I say, you know, it's funny. It's really funny, but imagine how these people looked at you when, you know, when you went down onto the ground and covered your head. But that was it. Unfortunately, I lived at the time, or I should say my parents lived at the time, on Craig and Delamont Avenue in Hamilton Hills District. And although at the time it was a good neighborhood, when people found out that I was a Vietnam veteran, I had this beautiful 68 Camaro Super Sport convertible, and people would either key my vehicle, rip my top on the convertible, slash my tires, or leave signs on there calling me a murderer and a baby killer. And my parents' house would have beer bottles and bricks and liquor bottles thrown through the window at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And eventually I had to leave my parents' house because of what they were doing. And even though we had roving patrols, there was this one police officer, Art Chairs, a very, very fine man. And they just, they couldn't sit there and watch that area 24 hours a day. But I eventually had to move out of my parents' house to avoid any more damages to where they were living. So I moved up to Saratoga Springs, Balsam Spot. And it took about a year. But I had to get out of there, and I didn't want to, I was not at the time confrontational because I was afraid that if I had lost my temper, I would have hurt somebody. So I just avoided, shall we say, that confrontation.
How do you feel your time in the service changed or affected your life? I know you've talked about it a little bit.
Actually, what it did was make me appreciate much, much more this great country that we have. I mean, I did have the opportunity to see some parts of the world that were actually sewers. I didn't put it in there, but I did get to Kuala Lumpur. I saw on some of the convoys and some of the villages how these people lived, and I just, thank God for where I was. And I could actually appreciate that because my father and his brothers were involved in World War II in Korea. And I mean, I can remember, I can tell a whole lot of stories about Veterans Day, at the time, Armistice Day and Decoration Day, which is quite different than what it is today. But the loyalty, I can still remember my uncles in the early 50s, even though they were World War II veterans. On those days would wear their uniforms, they would march in parades, and God help the person that was at a festivity when the Pledge of Allegiance or the Star-Spangled Banner was played and you were chewing gum or looking around or something, you got slapped in the back of the head. You stand at attention. You respect that flag and the whole bit. Today, it's completely different. It's all taken for granted. And I find that very discouraging. I really do. People just look at these holidays as a day off from work. They have forgotten the meaning of, I say, hallowed days. They're very, very special. And they should mean a lot. Don't get me wrong, I'm not being a super patriot or anything like this. But God, this country is fantastic. I love it. And I thank God that we have a president in there now that's got some guts, that's going to do something. A lot of people may not like it, but that's too bad. We just can't sit on our laurels. We don't have that. We don't have that buffer zone anymore. We don't know who our enemy is or what they intend on doing any more than we did in Vietnam. When a shoeshine kid, in a group of GIs can open up that box and blow away 5 people, what chance do we have today? We have to be alert. Thank God that we have a strong military. Thank God that we still have people that go into the military believing what this country is all about. And believe me, if I had been allowed to go back after 9/11, back into my old unit, I would have went back in. I don't care if it was just doing paperwork, driving a tractor trailer, I don't care. But they didn't want a 55-year-old, slightly overweight, balding, former military man in the unit. I can't blame them, but I would have done it if I could have. And that's not saying, that I want to pat me on the back and a whole bit and say, oh man, what a great page. No, that's not the point. It's the point now that I can understand the values that I didn't have when I was younger, but I did pick it up in the military. I did pick it up by the people I met, by the experiences I had. And it's something that I can never, it'll never leave my mind. It'll be with me till the day I die. And since joining the VFW and being commander for the last 3 years, I have met some fantastic people telling stories of World War II and a whole bit, and I can really appreciate, and I find myself, I did nothing compared to some of these men. These men were away for 4 or 5 years. They put their lives on the line for this country that we have. And some people say we're going in the wrong direction, we're not the way we used to be, but these people gave us our freedom, and I believe that only a veteran can really savor the flavor and the taste of this word we call freedom. A civilian can't, but I believe a veteran can. He can smell it. It's tangible to him, not an intangible thing. And that's my fervent belief. And I thank God that these men did what they did, because a lot of these people today wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for them. Let's not forget them. Let's always remember our veterans.
Now, when did you join the VFW?
1997.
Why did you wait that long?
As I said, when I first came back from Vietnam, I had people from the VFW and American Legion and Polish American veterans, and you know, because being a Polish extraction, I didn't want to be put on this pedestal and told to say this and that. There was too many things going through. I was too confused when I come back. You have to understand, when I came back, it was quite different than when I went in. And I was almost embarrassed of being a Vietnam vet. I wouldn't tell anybody. I wouldn't talk about any of my experiences unless it was another Vietnam vet, because they were the only ones that could understand what you went through. I couldn't explain it to my parents. I couldn't explain it to my uncle, who was a World War II veteran. It was totally different. And I didn't want to have anything to do with it. Even though I was in the Army Reserve, I had my uniforms and a whole bit there. I was proud of what I did, but I kept it quiet. And I just didn't want to get involved. And then when I took my discharge, I got out as an E6. I just decided to let everything go. I packed up my uniforms, put them away. I had my boots, I had all my albums, I had all my discharge papers and everything, and I put it into a back room of my mind, back room of my house, to forget about it. And how I got into the VFW, well, a few years ago I used to work at a garage early in the morning, and I met this man that would stop by every morning, and he was the quartermaster recruiter of the VFW post, and he would talk to me. And one day I just saluted him one morning. So he asked me if I'd like to join, and at that time my mother was dying, so I didn't get involved. All I said to him was that when everything gets resolved, I'll come see you. Well, it took approximately a year and a half, and then I joined in 1997, but I didn't get active until after my mother died in 1998, and that's when I started going to meetings, and then I became commander in 2000, and I'm commander now at the time. So up until last month, I was the only Vietnam veteran in the VFW outfit, and I got my next door neighbor who was with me in the same 1018th. He was in supply, I was in POL, and I got him to join. So now there's 2 Vietnam vets, and the rest of them are Korean and World War II veterans. And I'm trying to get a hold of this gentleman. I just came back from Iraq. He's in Glenville, and I'm going to try to get him to join our outfit, offer him a, free membership into it. We'll pay his dues for as long as he's in the military until he gets out, and have him come in and join us. So working on that now through Jim Wilson, whom I've known for a number of years, and fine gentleman. So,
Well, thank you very much for your interview.
well, I thank you very much for having me here.